We're joined now by Frank Isola at the Frank Isola on Twitter. You can read him on The Athletic. You can listen to him on SiriusXM. You can watch him on ESPN. Frank, was it me or was it like WWE meets the NBA last night down the stretch of both basketball games?
Yeah, there's a lot of replay reviews, especially that Miami-Milwaukee game. I think the game went 3 hours, which is a little hard to believe. It was, it had a chance to be exciting. Even the foul that they called on Goran Dragic, which allowed Chris Middleton to go to the line. He ends up tying the game by making all 3 free throws. That doesn't lose the game for Miami. The call on Antetokounmpo, Jimmy Butler's already shot the ball. The ball wasn't going to go in. And that's a really tough call in that situation by Mark Davis. He made both calls, both pretty controversial, but the last one that's a rough call in that situation.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen what exactly is going to end up happening in that series. But I was just saying as we went to break, I guess the positive is if you're down 0-2 without any crowds present, they're basically potentially 7 neutral site games. And so it doesn't feel like maybe there's as much rhythm or momentum as might have existed in a lot of the NBA series that you have covered over your career.
Yeah, so for both teams, this would be, for Toronto, they'd be going back to Boston for a Game 3. Milwaukee would be going back to Miami for a Game 3. I also think, too, there have been a couple of games here, if you go back to the Utah-Denver series, where guys have scored a lot of points. I mean, you have to take into account these are neutral site games. So are guys putting up 50 points on the road? I'm not so sure about that. I think you have to judge everything on a bit of a curve here, just because the games are neutral site games. And for younger players, the idea of not having to, play on the road with any pressure on you, it definitely changes it. What the coaches that I've spoken to that have been down in the bubble and that have played these games, they all think that it's a level playing field. The neutral court. So I think that is a major factor. Both Toronto and Milwaukee it's not over for them yet. Just like it wasn't over for Denver when they fell behind 3-1, just because now you don't have to travel on the road and try to win a couple of road games to save your season.
We're talking to Frank Isola, no doubt at all. Appreciate you, by the way, as always, getting up early with us. When you look kind of in general at all of the chaos that has happened in the world of sports, I'll move out of the NBA here. Does it seem wild to you that we are officially 1 week from the NFL returning? Because I know everybody ridicules the preseason and how ridiculous it is, but the preseason is one long advertisement for the NFL regular season because you're watching guys play, and I'll give you some examples. We have no idea how Joe Burrow might look because there's no talking points about what might happen in the preseason. We don't know who's going to be starting with the Chicago Bears, right? Because we haven't seen Nick Foles and we haven't seen Mitch Trubisky take any snaps at all. And as let's be honest, as little as there may be that you can glean from the NFL preseason, it at least gives us some form of talking points. All of a sudden, in 1 week, we're going to be kicking off the NFL season, and I think it's going to hit a lot of people with like a holy crap, the NFL is here, because a lot of times you'll be like, I'm sure you have as well, sometime in August you'll look up at the television in a bar or restaurant, at least back in the day, and there would be an NFL preseason game on. You'd be like, wow, I can't believe the NFL is already back. We haven't seen that at all for the last month.
I always say it every year that they play the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah.
I always think to myself, man, I can't believe there's already a game on. And then I kind of remember you tweeting about it a couple of times where, you'd play that first preseason game and you would say there'll now be a football game on every weekend.
Yes.
Between now and like February 2nd, whenever
that's right.
Whenever the Super Bowl is going to happen. And you left out one other guy, Tom Brady. How much would we have overanalyzed Tom Brady's one series that he would have played with Tampa Bay in their first preseason game? And that is the weird thing. There's no build up to it. And I was thinking about it the other day. It was September 1st, and we were, basketball games had been played, hockey games, and we were kind of more focused on that than we were on baseball because the baseball season's been completely wacky, and there had been no football games played yet except for the one college game. It's hard to believe that it's going to be here this quickly. But I think people are going to be really enthused because, I mean, you know this better than anybody. This country has this insatiable appetite for football, both college and the NFL. I think people are going to get super energized once that first NFL game is played next Thursday.
What does it say, too, by the way, for the Big Ten? We've got FBS football returning tonight, right? I mean, and I understand some people are going to be like, oh, I don't care at all about Southern Miss, South Alabama. Okay, you can have your snob appeal here and say that it doesn't really count. But then we got games on Saturday, we've got games on Monday, and then we've got games on Thursday. All of that rolling in together, college football, then the NFL, and then you have the ACC and the Big 12 both kicking off on that Saturday, followed by a full slate of Sunday and Monday football. We're about to sit down for a pretty substantial buffet of football excess, and I know it's still crazy to a huge percentage of my listeners that are sitting around like the Big Ten really isn't going to be playing, and all these other teams are going to be playing, including Central Arkansas, who played last Saturday, now play again tonight, and have passed all their tests, meaning there were 0 coronavirus issues in their first game, which makes sense, right? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, the odds of any players getting the coronavirus from a game seem very, very low.
Well, I think really what they should have done, the Big Ten, if they had just said, all right, we're going to hit the pause button for a minute here. We want to get everyone in school and see how things work out. So we're going to make a decision on September 15th whether or not we're going to play college football. So if they had done that and then thought about maybe starting on October 1st, you start on October 1st, you could get in, well, I guess you could easily get in 8 games, probably close to 10 games, and then you're set up to, have your team, one of your teams from your conference, playing the national semifinals. I understand why they did it from a health standpoint. There's, concern, and I guess the college presidents are thinking, forget it, let's just shut the whole thing down. But now that they shut it down, and now they see what's going on at other schools where they're able to control it, and let's face it, money is a huge factor here. Now they're thinking, man, if we don't play any games, we're going to be losing a ton of money. This could affect other programs, and now they see what's going on in the SEC, the ACC. The parents of a lot of the players in the Big Ten are upset about it. The coaches are upset. The players are upset. I don't think there would have been anything wrong if they had just said, we're going to hold off for a minute. Because think about what Notre Dame did. Notre Dame got their students on campus. They then now they have everyone taking online classes, and I'm of the belief once you go to this online format, it's actually easier to control it for the players because then you can kind of form a bubble in some ways because they're not going to be attending classes. You can get them in a situation kind of like what you're doing with the NHL and the NBA, create some type of bubble format which will help you control it. This way they'll be able to play games. The Big Ten, I get why they did it on some level, but there would have been nothing wrong. Instead of just shutting the whole thing down, just saying, you know what, we're going to take 2 to 3 weeks here. Let the kids come back on campus before we decide what exactly we're going to do.
I think the Big Ten blew it, and they're trying potentially to reverse that decision now. There's momentum potentially. Ohio State practiced in helmets and pads somewhat on yesterday. So there is some momentum among Ohio State at least to try to get a new vote of presidents to see whether they can flip it. But I got to give credit to the SEC, Frank, because this is exactly what they expected. They thought kids will get back on campus. We'll have an early blip of infections as colleges figure out how exactly to address this, and then we'll get back to some form of normalcy. And you can look to Notre Dame as an example of that because Notre Dame got their kids back earlier than most. They had an immediate spike in the number of infections. They kind of addressed it, and now things seem to have gone back relatively to normal. And not only is Notre Dame playing college football in the state of Indiana, which is obviously the footprint of the Big Ten, they're going to have crowds present. And I can't even imagine if you happen to be in Indiana and you're an Indiana fan or you're a Purdue fan and you're looking around like, wait a minute, we canceled our entire Big Ten fall sports calendar and Notre Dame's going to have fans present. They're not just playing football. I mean, that's pretty wild discrepancy and difference in how these schools have managed to acknowledge and work through the coronavirus issues.
And that's why the discussion about maybe playing around Thanksgiving, starting then, because this way that's when everyone's going to get sent home for Thanksgiving break, which now turns into winter break, and you don't come back until sometime in January. Well, I mean, if you're going to start on Thanksgiving, why not try to start a little bit earlier so you can get involved in maybe getting one of your teams into the national title game?
Yeah,
those,
and that's
games
the question.
I think it's what is it still January 1st, and then I guess maybe 10 days later. I think those schedules are still set for the national semifinals.
I think they can adjust those dates, but right now the date that matters the most, I would say, is the College Football Playoff Committee selection is scheduled to happen on December 20th. So that is when the 4 teams are going to be selected by the College Football Playoff Committee. So I think they
by
could
then
adjust.
You could play 5 games, and that's kind of unfair to other teams. If the Big Ten does go ahead with that schedule and you only play 5 games, and let's face it, it's almost like they're waiting to see how Ohio State does to put Ohio State in the national semifinals. But that would be a little unfair if they only played 5 games.
Oh no!
And they somehow got grandfathered in.
No, I don't think there's any way. I mean, I think what should happen, if I were sitting there and you made me in charge of the Big Ten, is they should acknowledge that the presidents didn't have the full data. Because, again, the other important part is since they voted in early August, now we're nearly a month after the fact that they canceled their season. Things have gotten a lot better. There was a lot of fear about the increasing case numbers, and those case numbers have almost declined by 50% since the peak a month or so ago, and they're declining rapidly. Hospitalizations are down roughly 50%, all those things. So as we move into legitimate parts of fall here in a few weeks, I think the SEC has been smart, looks good to play on the 26th, and I think when all these NFL games are going again, when you got Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday night NFL going, all firing on all cylinders, it's kind of ridiculous in general to be in that perspective, I think.
I have to think that these players, too, especially the guys in the Big Ten. So if you look at the SEC, the ACC, these guys are getting ready to play their season and they're gearing up. And you got the guys in the Big Ten who are practicing. They don't know whether or not they're going to play. And just think, I mean, come on, we all went to college, and if you didn't go, it's partying and hanging out is part of it. I mean, have you read in the paper like some of these schools where students are getting suspended left and right because they're hanging out? I'm trying to think like how I would have been at the University of Maryland during this whole thing. And it's just a natural instinct for people of that age to think like on the weekend, what do you think I'm going to do? Just hang out in my room for all hours of the day?
Not only that, Frank.
It's unfair. It's unfair what the colleges are doing to these kids. I mean, come on, it's like that. That's part of it. I mean, kids are it's going to be tough to just keep everyone locked down for that long.
Not only that, they've been locked down since March. I mean, you're talking about, imagine if you're a true freshman, your entire senior year of high school was shut down, right? You didn't get to go to prom. You didn't get to finish your spring sports season. You didn't get to have probably a traditional senior trip or senior summer where you're hanging out with all your good friends from your teenage years, getting ready to depart for college. Then you go off to college. You get into your dorm room. You may or may not be able to actually go to any classes in present. They're telling you, hey, you should be snitching on each other if you're getting together in parties or groups at all. And so this is just a really weird dynamic. And frankly, I mean, the truth of the matter is, if you look at the data, and I can't believe I keep having to say this, like your average college kid is under more danger from the seasonal flu. So what I would be more concerned about, and you kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier, a lot of these places are finishing their fall semester, before Thanksgiving. I'd be more nervous about coming home from college and being around grandma or grandpa at Thanksgiving dinner, which usually happens, obviously, when you may be sick, be totally fine, and then you get somebody else sick. That's what I'd be more nervous about. If you're on a college campus, most of these kids are going to be completely fine, and we never shut down a college campus for the seasonal flu, and the seasonal flu is far more deadly to your average college kid than the coronavirus is.
Yeah, and where my daughter is, like they basically don't want them leaving the campus. They figure we have you on here now.
Yeah,
she's going where she's taking some classes in person. Obviously, fewer students in the room, and then some of the classes are online. So it's more of a hybrid type of format for learning. What's amazing too, with some of these schools. I have a bunch of people who are incoming freshmen. So like you mentioned, your senior year of high school, your spring year stinks. And here's the thing, you never get that back.
Right.
You know, so if you were, let's say you were going to play softball or lacrosse, men's or women's, track and field in the spring, you never get that back. At least with college, if you want, you could take a gap year and start your freshman year when you wanted to. And I have a friend whose daughter is going to go to a school in the South, a good school, and she told them she wanted to take a gap year. They were fine with that. And then she was going to take some classes at a community college, and they told them, no, whoa. You do that, then you have to apply as a freshman. I think it's interesting. These colleges, if you think you have like a chess move that you could make, they have a counter move to that. The colleges have it all figured out when it comes to making sure they get your money.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is a total mess. I know we've got two different series. I'll swing back to the NBA with you right now. You've got the Rockets going up against the Lakers, and you have the Nuggets going up against the Clippers. Is there any reason in your mind to believe that anything other than Lakers-Clippers is going to happen in the Western Conference Finals?
It's weird. You know, if you go back to last July, which is a long time ago, we all thought there was going to be a very good chance that the Clippers and the Lakers were going to play together, and we were all thinking, man, that's going to be a crazy 2 weeks in L.A. at Staples Center. It's just going to be at the one venue. Well, there's a chance it could happen at one venue, but it's going to be in Orlando. Denver could put a little bit of a fear into the Clippers. The Clippers have an arrogance about them. You know, other than Doc Rivers and Kawhi Leonard, none of the guys on that team have won anything, and they act like they've been like a two-time champion. That is an arrogant team for a team that hasn't done anything. And I thought Marcus Morris, I thought he crossed the line a couple of times with Luka Doncic. Houston could be dangerous for the Lakers from this standpoint. The Lakers play big. They start JaVale McGee and Anthony Davis, where the Rockets obviously are going to be small. And the Clippers have always played small against the Lakers, and it gives them trouble. So I like what Oklahoma City did. I was kind of rooting for them, but I'd almost rather see Houston play the Lakers because I think they can give them a better series. And I do think they'll have a lot of trouble guarding on the perimeter. And I don't know who LeBron's going to guard. And remember the one thing about LeBron, when he has to play every other day, you think about all the minutes he's played. He's 35 years old. That's not going to be that easy for him. Now, having a few days leading up to this to rest is beneficial. I think the Rockets could give the Lakers some trouble. But to your point, I think we're going to get Clippers-Lakers, which is really the series that everyone wants to see. And unfortunately for the people in L.A., they're going to have to watch it on TV like the rest of us, and it's going to be played in Orlando.
No doubt. Frank Isola, appreciate the time, my man. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Clay.